our president, the president of PRAU, Mr. Stephen Mwanga. To kick us off this evening, I'd like to invite Mr. Stephen Mwanga to give us a few opening remarks, and then we'll delve right into our dialogue this evening. Thank you very much. Stephen, please.
Thank you, Tina. And I welcome everyone online who is joining us in this dialogue. Our dear keynote speaker, Honorable Maria Chiwanuka, our dear panelists, Dr. Litho, Patricia, Professor Waswa Balunywa, Miss Marjorie Chomuhendo, and Miss Lydia Mirembe. Good evening and good evening, and you're all welcome, and we are honored to have you here. Dear keynote speaker, we are exceedingly grateful to host you here. And we're also grateful to our panelists. We are happy that you've been able to spare time to join us in this dialogue, and we're extremely humbled. You've spared the time to join us. That is so grateful to us. Because society has changed over time, we found it important to discuss issues surrounding achievements, challenges, gaps, and so on, as far as women in leadership in the PRAU fraternity is concerned. That informed our decision to come up with this topic. We also thought that it is important for us to share experiences of distinguished communication leaders, managers, such as our panelists, and most importantly, the keynote speaker. People who have been in the communication industry, in the media industry for some time. They have encountered challenges, they have experience to share with us, they have knowledge, and so on to share with us. And that's where we came from to have that topic. We are so grateful to keynote speaker especially. I'll repeat this and in and out, because she really spared her time. We got to her at short notice, but she wasn't hesitant to say, oh, I'll come and I'll be present. Madam, we are very grateful that you're present today. I would like to thank the PRAU fraternity, beginning with PRAU past presidents, wherever you are, and you're joining us in this debate. We are grateful to have you in this dialogue. We are also grateful to all members of PRAU that have joined in, and those that haven't joined in, we hope that they'll be joining us soon. My heartfelt thanks go to Parliament of Uganda, and most especially Ms. Helen Kawesa. Parliament offered us this facility to dialogue from here, or to Zoom our dialogue from here, and we are really very grateful for that support. Members who are joining us, we are grateful, like I said, that you are with us, and we hope that this will be a fruitful dialogue. We'll be able to gain more knowledge, more skills, share information, and so on as we celebrate the Women's Day, today, 8th March, 2021. Dear keynote speaker, before I take leave of this microphone, allow me say a little brief about PR and PRAU in general. PRAU is a short form of Public Relations Association of Uganda. This association started 45 years ago. We are the 45th governing council. The association has an organizational structure which comprises the annual general meeting, or commonly known as AGM, the governing council, and working committees. And with your permission, Madam Keynote Speaker and panelists, allow me introduce members of the current Governing Council. I'll start with myself, but members of the council that are joining us online will ask you to raise your arm so you can be seen. I am the president. My name is Stephen Mwanga, and I am deputized by our moderator, Ms. Tina Wamala. And everyone knows that she's now the moderator. I would like to introduce the rest of the GC members who are joining us online. I'll start with immediate past president, Ms. Sarah Kajingo. Kindly raise your hand, Sarah. Okay. Next is the Secretary General, Ms. Allen Semper. Allen, please raise your arm. Okay, Allen is there, but I think she's unable to do that. We have the Director of Programs, Miss Jackie Tahakanizibwa. Jackie, please raise your arm. Thank you so much, Jackie. And we have Miss Lynn Tukei, Director PR. She's the Director PR. Lynn, please raise your arm wherever you are. Okay. The next is we have a director in charge of discipline, Miss Yvonne Impanga. Yvonne, please raise your arm. Okay. Then we have the Deputy Secretary General, Miss Kezia Kovrunji. Kezia. Okay, I think they'll come in. We'll have to introduce them when they come back. Then we have a student representative, Mr. Joseph Kakoza. Joseph, are you with us online? Okay. That's the team that I work with. That's the team that has helped us to organize this dialogue. And lastly, but not least on the team, is our administrator, Miss Brenda Nampija. She's in the room here at the extreme corner there. She's our administrator. She takes care of PRAU office, and she manages most of the administrative issues there with the support of the Secretary General. Once again, I'd like to thank you, Madam Keynote Speaker. I would like to thank all the panelists. I would like to thank all PRAU members that are joining us in this dialogue. We thank you for making time to be with us in this dialogue and to join the women in celebrating this very important day. We are grateful and hope that you will stay with us till the end of this dialogue. Thank you so much. Back to you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Mr. President Stephen Mwanga, President of PRAU. As I mentioned earlier, ladies and gentlemen, we are extremely privileged to be in the presence of distinguished panelists. And our first panelist who I'll be introducing now is our keynote address by Honorable Maria Chiwanuka, who we all know as former Minister of Finance and Economic Development. She is also the General Manager of Radio 1 and Radio 2. She's a current Senior Presidential Advisor, Finance, for the government of Uganda. And she has a wide spectrum of experience in finance and development. She has served as chairperson for Uganda Registration Services Bureau, as well as Presidential Investment Roundtable, Business Climate, and is the current chairperson of United Bank for Africa. She will be deep diving and unpacking our topic for this evening, which is Women in Leadership, Assessing Gender Equality in Uganda's PR Fraternity. Honorable Chiwanuka, thank you so much for being with us this evening. Please.
Thank you very much, PRAU. I'm very, very pleased to be back here because I remember being very involved with PRAU, maybe not in the at inception, since you say it's 46 years old, but in the days when we're trying to increase its visibility. So I'm very happy to be back here and to see that you're all alive, well, and not just surviving, but thriving. Women in leadership in public relations. What does that mean? It's often said that women are the most underutilized asset in the world. Studies have shown the economic inclusion of women is fundamental to reducing gender inequality and spurring overall economic development because the woman is the biggest multiplier in the social sphere. If you empower a woman, you empower her family, her community, and ultimately the world. But that is something we all know. So when we ask, the theme for this year's International Women's Day is Women in Leadership, what does this phrase mean to all of us when it comes to PR and communications? My take is it should not even be an issue. Every day of the year is Women's Day. 365 Women's Day every day of the year. Because women are the majority. As Tina said, they're over 50%, in fact, actually 52% of the world's population. So the first thing we must always note for women and for men as well is that this is not a case of people being marginalized or people being victimized, but a case of share and share alike. Not one behind the other, not man in front of the woman or woman in front of the man in overcompensation, but side by side. Side by side is the way to go to develop our nation, to develop our families, to develop our communities. Because mothers, women are natural leaders. Mothers are natural leaders. We all know the saying that the hand that rocks the cradle rules the world. The famous nurse pioneer, Florence Nightingale of the 19th century, who developed the art of military nursing, she tended so many deathbeds of soldiers and during the European wars of the 19th century. And she once said, very famously, that no dying soldier she ever attended to cried out for his father. It was always their mother. That is something we should always keep in mind. Even in the animal kingdom, hyenas, lions, baboons, elephants, whales, dolphins are some species where it is very obvious that the women are the leaders. So, women in leadership is a natural thing that we should see more often and not just a cause for discussion and for celebration once a year. Why do we think women's leadership, and more specifically in the PR section, is important? And what gender specific challenges, stereotypes, or barriers have I personally encountered? I think women in leadership in communications, because PR is basically about communications, as media is about communications, is very, very important because if you have any task that requires more than one person, you have to have a means of communication between the two individuals, between an individual and his firm, between two firms, between two countries, between whoever the various actors are. And women are famously seen as being more adept at listening. We are told we have an ability to pick up body language and to read nonverbal clues. We are told we have effective display of empathy. We nod our heads at the right time. We lean forward in listening to our talker. Whereas the men are seen as having a very commanding physical presence. They lean back in their chairs when they're talking, and they have an effective display of power. The three communication weaknesses for women is that we're seen to be over emotional sometimes, to meander, we don't get to the point, and maybe not authoritative enough. Whereas the weaknesses for the men, they seem to be blunt, overconfident, maybe insensitive to their audience reactions, and too confident in their own opinions. So there's strength and weakness on both sides. But women being seen as the listener, as a person who engages with children at an early age before they can talk, we are seen as being slightly better adapted to listen, to communicate, and to understand. I've met my share of challenges along the way. I'm sure we all have. I've discussed many of my challenges in various forums, but for today, I'll lead off with a challenge met by one of my very dear friends, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, who's now been installed as the first African and the first woman head of the World Trade Organization. She has a PhD from Harvard and various other universities, a whole alphabet of qualifications. But when she was appointed, a newspaper in Switzerland said, this grandmother will become the boss of the World Trade Organization. I don't think they would have said that if it had been a grandfather. So, of course, there was a ruckus and they eventually apologized. But these are the kind of things we have to face every day as women. And the thing is not to take offense. Be affable, ride with the punch, and use it to punch back. I remember going to Tanzania when I was with the World Bank. I was leading a mission of 5 men who were all older than me and all technical experts in energy, but I was the team leader. And we walk into the office of the PS, the new PS, having been duly announced. And when he saw me, he straight away said to me in Swahili, which I'll repeat in English since most people's Swahili is not so good. He said, I've been waiting for you to come and take dictation. And now you turn up just when the Bazungus are here. Go away and come back later. He thought I'd been sent up from the typing pool. And I said, I am Maria Kwana and I am the mission leader for the World Bank mission. He said, oh, you're the one. I thought you're going to be a Japanese lady. Kiwana apparently is also a name in Japan. But again, you have to be affable. You can't take too much offense. You just make sure you take charge of the meeting and lead it like it has never been led before. When we started Radio 1, there were 3 other stations, commercial stations in existence. And the common feeling amongst them, they're all led by men, who are good friends of mine now. But at the time they said, this radio station run by a woman, give it 6 months. So, ladies, we've come a long way, baby. Rejoice in that. But as employers, and I'm sure there are many employers out there, how can we make sure we make best use of this resource called womankind that is there in our ranks? We might say, oh, we have meetings and the women are always invited. But what is our manner in those meetings? We might start off by saying, we've been doing very well with such and such a product, but I wonder whether it's reached the end of its useful life. Helen, what do you think? I've already told Helen that I feel it has reached the end of its useful life. And Helen will probably feel, being a lady who's had to do her share of fighting and is maybe a little bit fatigued, she'll say, it's not really worth me saying that I feel this product is just at the beginning of its useful life. Or she might say something to that effect that I think we can develop it, but someone else will jump in and say, no, I think we can't go on with this product. And immediately Helen will fold. So maybe when we have these meetings, one way of making sure that everybody, not just women, but even the most timid members, if they happen to be men, to make sure they get involved is to go around the table and not put our opinions first and say, what do you think, Stephen? What do you think, Tina? What do you think, so and so? And make sure everyone has a chance to put their opinion. And if that opinion is taken up and is the cornerstone of a strategy and an activation, make sure the initiator receives their due praise and not just the person who becomes the face of the activation. In the radio stations, our activators are the presenters. They're our ambassadors to the world. But everybody in the station is a PR person. We don't have a PR person at the stations because everybody is a PR person. Everybody is representing our organization, our services, our products to the world. And I think that is how PR people should see themselves. You are in charge of presenting your product or your service to the world. And you have to see how you can best accomplish that, especially in view of the competition. So you must not abdicate the listening role as PR persons in the organization. You, more than anyone else, needs to get all the nuances of the workers and what they feel about the products and services. You'll be surprised what you pick up. We need to make sure we give equal space in our organizations. And not just say, I'm giving more space to the women, say, I'm giving more space to everybody. I will not tolerate bullying. I will make sure that everyone has a chance to participate. And then you see the women blossoming. So I do it not so much as bringing up the women, but bringing up the workers. Because it is true that up to now, women need that a little bit more than men. But we will soon be there. We'll soon be there. My heads of department, I've had several heads of department who are women. And not because I looked for women, but I looked for the best person who often happened to be a woman. And I made sure that happened. Mine was the only radio station of the 5 pioneer stations that had only Ugandans as heads of department from day one. We had one gentleman from a presenter from the UK for 2 years who basically was coaching everybody and showing everybody what they should be doing. But he was a consultant. He was never in the hierarchy. In fact, he's the one who told them, you're presenters and not DJs. DJs are in nightclubs. Presenters are what you have in radio stations. So what are the achievements and important milestones for women in PR and communication leadership positions? Well, if we look at the political field, straight away you can see the Minister of ICT is a female, and the Minister of and the leader of UCC, Uganda Communications Commission, is also a woman. So there you have 2 positions, the most powerful positions in communications are both held by women. And they're women who are not just women, but actually qualified in their fields. One is a PR expert and the other is an engineer in technology, IC technology. Have Radio 1 and Radio 2 were the female manager for the last 23 and 19 years respectively. We've had editorial leadership in the New Vision and the Monitor in the past, Sanyu FM, have all been women. But like I say, we need to make sure everyone performs to their best and not just promote a woman because she's a woman, but promote her because she can do a good job. And I can assure you they do good jobs. And now just one word to us ladies, Stephen, shut your ears. We must never play the victim. We must never say, oh, I've been marginalized, so I'm owed this or that. We must play as members of the majority. We must be there as people who deserve to be there because of our skills, our expertise, our techniques. Never say, oh, I am I am a product of affirmative action. No, you're not. You're there because of your skills. And if you weren't skilled enough, then I'm sure they would soon see a way to see you off, especially in the private sector. But how do we solve the continuing inequalities? And please, let us not start talking about the government or parliament, who is our host tonight. Uganda has how many constituencies, Helen? 120 something? 125, which means straight away you have 125 women MPs who are members of women MPs for the district. We have women who are in the mainstream MPships. So I think you've got easily 200 women, Helen. Easily 35, 40% are women of our parliament. There are no laws in Uganda that say a woman can't hold property or land in her name. There are no laws that say women cannot enter various professions or fields. So why do we feel there's still a lack? Uganda's gender check shows we've passed some of the most progressive laws to enable women. And other countries look to us for it as an example. So why is it that not every Ugandan woman feels that she's empowered? Because on the next step down from government is the community. And down from the community is the household. And that is where the thorn is in our flesh. The communities. In many of our communities, a woman is valued as a member of her clan or her family, someone's sister, someone's daughter. But when she goes and be someone's mother or someone's wife in a different clan or different family, then she's not valued. These are some of the things we need to look at. So it's not that they feel that women are inferior. No, because where she's born, as a Senga in my tribe, you're a very powerful person. So why aren't you a powerful person where you live? I must say again here that in Uganda, I've not experienced any discrimination at work, unlike some of the Western countries I've worked in. So it is really up to us as members of the community and as members of our household to carry this narrative forward. Let us not keep on saying the government this and the government that. They've done their share. Now it's up to us, and up to us as PR professionals, as communication personnel, to carry the message forward. We don't have enough women as ministers. We've not yet had a woman president. We have very few women CEOs. We don't have enough women as decision makers. But in the media, and here I want to count the film industry and online and so on. In the media, we've got women participation. And you know how you can get a CEO tomorrow? Write a film script with a woman as a CEO. Write a book where a woman is the president. Make it normal for women to have these positions. I remember when they had the first woman in space shuttle in 1986. She was a teacher, and they devoted so much time to covering her, and all the girls wanted to be like Christy, I forget her second name. Unfortunately, that was the mission that exploded, and everyone was killed. But they've gone back into space, and now it's an everyday thing for a woman astronaut to be in space. It's an everyday thing for a woman to be a doctor, a dentist, an engineer. I remember when I was 17 in my S4 holidays, I went to work at the All Africa Trade Fair, the first and last All Africa Trade Fair in Nairobi. And I was working at the store of Ship Toothbrush, and they were selling toothbrushes from Uganda. And the people coming by were asking me, "Oh, are you that lady dentist?" because there'd been a profile on the one and only lady dentist in Uganda. It had been in the East African newspaper. And they said, oh, the dentist is a lady from Uganda. So maybe this teenage girl is her. Because it was so strange. But now no one talks about lady dentist. So if we take our media, if we take our sector and make sure we have more female PR people, make sure there are more female news readers, which I see an increasing number of. Make sure the movies that we write, the movies that we import, do not depict women as helpless, uh, abused victims, or as gold diggers, or as basically some grandmother type who's not really up to scratch, or as a teenager who's sort of spaced out. If we give them meaningful roles, it will become an everyday thing on screen, in online, and in the print, and that will then feed into the normal everyday life. Working from home as an offshoot of the COVID pandemic has been a boon for women because childcare was often quoted as the one thing that kept women from the career ladder. But now you can work from home with your children and adapt your day to their schedule. You see, things are beginning to fall into place. I know one company that's told me that it's going to keep working from home even after the pandemic is officially over because they say we're saving rent in office building. Our people work from their homes, they don't charge us rent, and they don't have to pay transport uh, charges, and they don't have to buy office wear. When we need to have a meeting with everybody present, we made sure we have a small office with a big garden, and we put up a tent, and everyone comes to the tent. I see you have one out here. So there is one of the advantages of the pandemic. There is a recent phenomena that can help women to flourish. What role can men play in addressing these inequalities? The same role we've been talking about. There's no difference between men and women when it comes to advancing women. Except, please, when you have conferences about women leadership or women issues, make sure the panelists are not all men. I've seen that happen in a few places. If we go back to COVID for a minute, COVID affected us in the media very, very much because as the purveyors of an essential service, communication is an essential service, the government had to be able to speak to the population at any time, especially since they're all locked down in their homes. We had to be an essential service along with the police, along with the health services, along with the fire brigade. We had to keep on air, but our workers were not allowed to use their transport, and there was no public transport. And we had workers living in beyond Kasangati. We had workers living in Mukono. We had workers in Kajansi, in Piji. I tell you, I never knew my workers were so far flung. And we had to bring them in and take them home. We had one vehicle for Radio 1 and another vehicle for Radio 2, and each one was doing 250 kilometers a night. You can imagine what that did to our fuel bills. And funny enough, the garages weren't allowed to be open. So we just had to pray God they didn't break down. So we did that for 5 months. April, May, June, July, August, until public transport was restored. But we kept on our programming. Where we had 5 shows, made it 4. Where there were 4, we made it 3. But Spectrum went on. All the talk shows went on by remote control. We had to make sure that observing the SOPs, which we all know about. And I'm very pleased to say, and even boast, that of our workforce of 60 people that worked all the way through the worst days of the pandemic, we did not have a single sick person because they all observed the SOPs and we cut down access to the building. You only came in if it was your show. You only came in if you're a newsreader or news writer. You only came in if you're a marketing person who had to pick up materials to take to a client. Otherwise, visitors, no. Studio guests, online. Other workers, only when it was your time. And the average population, I think, went down from 30 to 40 to less than 10 at any one time. But the show went on. So again, you can get ways of efficiencies and decreasing costs. What are my projections for women in leadership in the public relations and communication industry for the next 5 years? My guess is just as good as yours, and yours is just as good as mine. It depends what we do with it. If rather than saying women over the next 5 years, I think we should say talented, diverse, underutilized talent that happens to be women. I'd just like to close very quickly with 3 takeaways for the public relations industry as a specific. We talked earlier about the need to be the voice of your product or your services to the market, to the general public. You must control this message. You must control the perception of your firm or your product or your service, especially when it's compared to the competition. Never invite us media people and hand out a press release and say, any questions? No. You have to control the message. You have to take us and show us what you want us to say. You have to create a brand. As PR, you have to say, my product is faster, lighter, brighter, heavier, more value for money, whatever it is. I'll give you my own stations as case in point. Radio 1, people will say, where your car radio stops. Immediately, that's the one you listen to in your car. And what do you listen? Great songs? Great memories. It's the memories. Songs belong to anybody, but the memories belong to you individually. And I can tell you the ear is the most evocative organ that we have. More than the eyes, more than the taste, more than the smell. Maybe smell comes a little bit closer, but not many things have a distinctive smell. But one word can take you back. One tingle of a tune can take you back. Whereas you can look at a picture and say, oh yeah, we went on holiday. Yeah. Mombasa, 20 years ago. But the sound of the waves on the shore will be even more evocative. Same with Radio 2. Radio 2 is not Radio 2. It is Akabozi, Kubiri, beep, beep, traffic. And we got a real broker to come into the studio and say, Akabozi, Akabozi, Akabozi. It was a real broker. And a real woman passenger came and said, Tom Pisawo. Again, to the feeling of crowds, noise, conversation, chikati, tukoze tutia. What's up? Hadithi. And please always be truthful. The truth will out, or water will always find its own level. We media people are nosy people. And once you invite us in, we'll investigate. But please remember to control the message. We are busy. We are selfish. We are human beings. We're not going to devise a message for you. You must develop your PR strategy to compel us to pay attention to your story and to say, hey, world, come and look at this story. Come and look at this product. If you don't do that, then sure, we'll give you lip service, but there's not much more we can do. What we always tell our clients that we can make people listen, we can make people try you once, but you must make them come back. So PR, we can send out your message, but for someone to come back a second time or third time for your product, your service, your concept, your whatever, you have to do that. So that's why you have to be truthful. And with those not so few words, I don't know whether I've overrun my time or whether I'm in within time.
We loved every minute of what
Thank
you
you.
said. Thank you so much, Honorable Chiwanuka. Extremely wise words, words of wisdom, and we're very grateful for your keynote address. As I've mentioned in the chat, you have an opportunity to ask some questions to Honorable Minister Chiwanuka. I see some questions here in the chat. She will answer them in batches of 5. So, Honorable, we have a question here from Atukure Tadeo, who says, how do we have an institutionalized PR system across sectors? How do we have an institutionalized PR system across sectors? It is great to have everyone buy in PR engagement, initiatives, and vision. However, oftentimes there is a continued perception that everyone will handle PR in an institution, and this has limited PR prioritization. So that's his first statement and question. He further adds that as a former Minister of Finance, are there some key experiences of decision making that were hinged on PR? Somebody else here is asking, what has been the biggest challenge as a woman, especially in your working life? And many thanks for an excellent keynote speech. I think you can address those and then we'll come back to the audience for any further questions. And you can start with those 3, Honorable. Thank you.
Okay. I think the first question asks, how can we institutionalize a PR system across sectors? Does that mean to get a uniform PR system? I don't think you can, and I don't think I would. PR has to be tailor-made for each instance. The PR for a light lager will not be the same as a PR for a heavy ale. The PR for exotic perfume will not be the same as the PR for dependable, hygienic family soap. Different attributes conferring different benefits, perceived benefits to the user. Some will want to deal with exclusivity, others will want to deal with accessibility or affordability. It's a question of what is the message you want to get across to who. So I don't think that can be institutionalized. And as to the whether everyone can do PR, I think everyone can do PR to a certain extent. That's what we practice in our station. And PR means at bedrock, putting forward the best face of your company. It can be as something as simple as being clean, attentive, and polite to a customer. It can be something much more complicated and needing to digest a whole tract of product information and seeing how best to get it out. But I think everybody can do PR to some extent. Now, about the Ministry of Finance, was there any decision making that I made that was hinged on PR? Actually, I just thought very quickly, and I think I can safely say for me, my go-to decision-making mantra was the greatest good for the greatest number. decisions to make sure it confer the greatest benefits on the greatest number of people. That's what I felt that was a guidance that could never go wrong.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Honorable Chiwanuka. She mentioned to us women never to play the victim and to actually play on our role or position as the majority in this world and the majority also here in Uganda. So are there any further questions for Honorable Chiwanuka? You can raise your hand or type your question in the chat. I'll give some of the audience here physically an opportunity. Please go ahead, Helen.
Thank you, Maria, for the excellent talk. That's not what we had expected. I wanted to ask you a question or two. One is about, you talked about the effect of COVID on your organization. And I've noted that, because I'm a keen, I listen a lot to your great songs, great memories. I've noted that one of the casualties of COVID on your station may have been a woman presenter, a woman moderator of the Spectrum on Friday. I wanted to know if that was a result of the COVID or just something else that happened. Secondly, I've also noted that one other member we are expecting to come to Parliament in May was one of your media managers. And apart from that, you've also, the organization has also been, can I use the word, breeding a number of politicians here and there. What do you feel about that? Do you feel that, do you feel you're losing, okay, of course she's coming in, it's good. Do you feel you're losing out somebody, or do you feel you're breed nice when they leave your organization and go away? And I want to comment that I think you've bred a number of good women moderators and news readers. So thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much, Helen. You asked a question about spectrum, and as you know, spectrum, the very definition of spectrum is evolving. Colors evolve, so spectrum is always evolving, and the presenters come and go, but spectrum remains the same. As to the incoming member of Parliament, congratulations to you again. We feel that radio and television here in Uganda is a starting point. And people can go on to, for them, bigger things. You mentioned we've got some politicians who cut their teeth on spectrum. We have a lot of graduates of the Spectrum Academy, a lot. And I think it's well known that if one wants to raise their profile, they make sure they become a guest, a regular guest on Spectrum. We don't see so much of them afterwards, but that's okay. We have a new class of intake whereas every 3 or 4 years, we have a new class of incoming intake. We've also provided talent to the BBC, to the Voice of America, to various radio stations in Kenya, South Africa, and we'll continue doing that. We'll never be offended if someone wants to leave and tells us in a timely way. And we're very proud in that. We feel it also helps us because then we have friends across the world. I remember when I went to, the first time I went on Focus on Africa at the BBC in London. I was like, oh my goodness, what are they going to ask me this time? But the two people greeted me were graduates of Spectrum. Everything was fine after that.
Thank you very much, Honorable, for answering those questions from Helen. We have a question on the chat. It will be the final question I'm accepting. Owing to time, we need to get to the next item of our agenda. Someone here is asking, how can you, there are two questions actually. The first question is, how can we motivate radio and TV proprietors to pay a reasonable salary to their workforce, especially those who've worked with the station for quite a lengthy period of time? That's question one. And then there's a second question here. Some women, some ladies become emotional in the workplace. and this affects their ability to perform, make good decisions, and execute objective judgments. How can you avoid this? Or how can ladies avoid this? So, Honorable, these will be the last two questions you will answer verbally, and the rest, if you don't mind, you'll answer on the chat, owing to time. So if you could kindly respond to those two,
Okay.
then we'll move to that next
Okay.
item.
Okay, very quickly on the topic of pay, our people, Spectrum, Radio 1 and Radio 2 are all paid a reasonable market rate. But across the media, yes, there are areas where people are paid less. And I think you have to take it on a case by case basis. There's some areas where the proprietor will tell you, I can't afford to pay you very much. You bring in advertisers, or you bring in customers, or you bring in this or that, and that will be your extra pay. I know one who told his right on Chawanya, Oina show you kadukako. So, but when that person went on to complain that they're not being paid, I mean, maybe there's a misunderstanding between the two. And another thing about saying people should be paid more with time, again, I think this is a bit of civil service mentality in coming into the private sector. Because in the private sector, people pay according to the work done. So if the work you're doing is the same work you were doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, then the pay cannot really vary that much, or maybe a cost of living increase. So, and that is one reason why you see in more sophisticated economies, and increasingly now in Uganda, people will take a hiatus or take a break from working and go and get more qualifications. And then they can come back and say, look, I've got more qualifications. I can now do this, or I can do more of this. How about it? I think that is something we must keep in mind as workers. How can I grow myself? How can I grow my individual brand? How can I become more valuable to this organization than I was last year or the year before?
Thank you very much. Can we give her a round of applause? Wherever you are, please give her a virtual round of applause. The physical people, a round of applause. Excellent, excellent keynote address. I couldn't be happier with what I've heard.
And I didn't pay for that commercial.
Personally, I will never, ever play the victim, and believe in my skills, believe in my knowledge. That is good enough for me as a woman. Thank you very much for those inspirational words, for sharing your experiences and reflections with everybody on this call this evening. Honorable Chiwanuka, our keynote address for this evening. As I mentioned earlier, we have other distinguished panelists who are on the line and with us physically. I will start by briefly introducing them, because we're now going to get into our next item on the agenda, which is our panel discussion, where we'll be looking deeper into the issues of women in leadership, specifically in the PR fraternity, and also more broadly in terms of various sectors. So I will start by introducing Professor Waswa Balunywa, who has a PhD and is currently the principal of Makerere University Business School. He has been teaching in university for over 30 years, primarily in the areas of business administration, accounting, finance, and management. In recent years, he focused on teaching and researching into entrepreneurship, strategy, change management, and leadership. And we're very privileged to have him on our panel this evening. In our panel, we are also blessed to have Miss Marjorie Chomuhendo. She's a communication professional with over 15 years experience in strategic communication. She is currently a lecturer and researcher in the Department of Journalism and Communication at Makerere University. She holds a master's in philosophy and media studies from the University of Oslo, and she's also a Commonwealth Professional Fellow alumna, and has attended a number of communication training programs from Johns Hopkins University, Makerere University, Ohio University, Stellenbosch, and the University of Leicester, to mention but a few. Again, very privileged to have you on the call, Ms. Chomuhendo. Physically with us, we're happy to have my lecturer, Dr. Patricia Letho. She's the board chair of Uganda Media Women's Association with over 24 years experience in the media and communication and training industry. She has taught at the Department of Journalism and Communication at Makerere University, and her research interests are in media and gender, broadcasting, and communication for development. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Letho.
Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, we also have Lydia Mirembe as one of our panel members. Lydia is a seasoned communication practitioner with a career spanning over 20 years. She holds a bachelor's degree in mass communication from Makerere University and a master's in international communication from the University of Leeds, UK. She has practiced journalism and communication, working with reputable organizations at national and international level. She has undertaken several consultancy assignments in the areas of communication strategy, development and implementation, project documentation, and communication research and analysis, amongst others. She's also in academia. She teaches with Makerere University School of Communication and Journalism, and now with Uganda Christian University Mukono, Faculty of Journalism and Media and Communication. Lydia, thank you for joining us as well. So panel members, I will dive right into our theme or topic for today, which has been mentioned to members, women in leadership, assessing women's leadership in the PR fraternity. Uganda is seen as one of the more progressive countries in the world, recognizing women's rights. We have strategies and policies that are very pro-women. Honorable Chiwanuka talked about affirmative action, something that the government has been advocating for several years. Uganda is also with one of the countries that had the very first female vice president in Dr. Kazibwe, holding a coveted record in this regard. But the question now here is, how are women in leadership positions able to manage work-life balance that follows them everywhere they go? She spoke about it as home care being an issue for most women assuming positions in leadership. The question is, women in leadership positions are constantly asked how they manage family and work. Does being a woman and having the ability to navigate these two worlds make them better leaders than men? Dr. Letho, I'll start with you.
Thank you so much, Tina. I'm honored to be here, honored to be in the presence of great leaders like Honorable Chiwanuka. Personally, there are things I don't think about, but I'm often asked those questions. I do so many things at the same time. I'm a mother of 2 sons, and that would make you think that I think differently about men. But as a matter of fact, I think there are things that are innate to women, the ability to multitask. It's something I don't think about, but many times I'm asked, how do you manage? But I think one of the things as a woman leader you've got to do is to know that often as a woman, you're judged by those very social responsibilities, family responsibilities. Or she thinks because she's pregnant, she wants to get away with this. She thinks that she's this. So unless you're ill or something like that, I mean, you should be able to do your work. You should put in the extra effort. Of course, pregnancy can have its own challenges, but you should be able to do your work. At the same time, you've got to navigate certain circles because like Honorable Chiwanuka earlier said, if you look at the Ugandan policies, the provisions, look at parliament, we seem to have the table laid. But what is happening in reality? You find that your community constantly drags you down. Your family constantly drags you down. Your spouse constantly drags you down. And for me, part of the blame, I'm one of those believers in gender equity as opposed to women only. Part of the challenge is that we've isolated women in this box and told them all these nice things, taught them about these rights, but we forget women are a product of a society of women and men. Growing up, women, you're told you have to do this, you have to do this, I don't know, look down, don't do what, I don't know, kneel. Men are told as a man, speak out, do this. So you meet this man you're married to, and these are his expectations of a woman. And then you've been isolated by all these women efforts to basically make you appreciate yourself better, make you more eloquent, make you what, but the man is left at the other typical patriarchal perception, and that is the man you married. And for me, those are some of the sources of conflict. So if your spouse does not understand that actually times have changed, an empowered woman means this, if your wife works this out, she can contribute, then to me, we shall never make progress. So when we have people like Mr. Mwanga here on Women's Day, taking part, for me, that makes a difference. But is he here as president of PRAU, or has he bought into the concept? Those are the questions I like to ask. So as a mother of men, 2 sons, like the things that make them try to appreciate. It's not easy, by the way. Of course, there are other men around them, my father, my brothers, who try to make them think differently. And of course, priding myself as one of those women passionate about women issues. One day my son asked me, "Mommy, look at that woman driving a lorry." I'm like, oh, I'm disappointed in myself. I thought I'd done a better job. But you realize that I'm not the only person in their lives. There's school, there's this, and we've got to do better. But can we bring men to the table and make them part of their discussion? Can we make them appreciate? Because women in leadership, you find we are a lot of women in mid-level management, yes, but how many are we at the top? PRAU, for instance, we had so many female presidents as in PRAU. Even the last one, Sarah Kajingo, also having been a female guild president of Makerere. Those are things that should speak to the numbers. But is it just about the numbers? How about our mental perception as women ourselves? Like Honorable said again, women, we like to play victim. And sometimes I have marketeers. My other life, I am head of communications and community outreach for the Rural Electrification Agency. The energy sector is an interesting place because it's mostly male dominated. Interesting enough, in the last few years, we've had more women. The minister is a woman, Honorable Chitutu, the woman for mineral, Honorable Pend is a woman, my current CEO, Engineer Mutibwa, we have Era, we have Ziria is a woman. I'm a woman. We have so many women leaders. But it's a real challenge because most of the workforce and things like that are male. And there's a way they perceive women. And many times my experience is that as a woman, there are things you don't think about, but anytime there's a conflict, the threats to a woman. I had a personal experience where men will threaten, okay, that is the case. Don't be surprised if she's raped. Yes, and these are real. And sometimes these things seem so far-fetched until it happens to you. Don't be surprised if your children are kidnapped. Someone attacked me in my house and threatened to kidnap my children. And these are real for women. Yes, how about men? Yes, I mean, there was this particular conflict where I was the only woman on the other side and the number of men, and I actually had to make it a police case. And I was asking, how come you've not attacked the other men in their homes? So you think because I'm a woman, you can take me on. And then because you're a woman, they don't want you to speak about it. You're emotional, you're crying, and this like that. And I think I'm quite a strong woman, but those are the real challenges that women leaders face. When men can't get their way as your subordinates, they try to use those sexual aspects to challenge you. I believe I'm not one of those women who feel sorry for myself. I never use the female card to get my way. I believe I work hard, I push, I challenge, I rationalize, I justify my case. But I think women face that as an actual challenge. So I think we need to nurture women to think differently, to think about equity, not to think about favors. A lot of women marketeers, for instance, something I would always tell women marketeers, if an organization is not buying into what they're selling, you find women pushing down their cleavage. And for me, if you're a woman and you come, I always laugh and say, unfortunately, I'm female like you. Now, can you break down the issues? And then they'll bypass you and go to your boss's mail and try to bat their eyelid. So sometimes we're a disfavor to ourselves as women. So I think it's about time we stepped away from that sympathy box and actually did the job. So as a woman, when you become a leader as a woman and you're leading women and you're leading men, how do we manage that? At the same time, balancing your home life and all these other responsibilities you might have. I think it's not any different for men, but I think as women, we've got to, first of all, embrace that support system as women, appreciate women as women, move away from the queen bee syndrome, but what is the task at hand? What do I need to do? Do I have to read extra? Or do I think being female and those provisions, those wonderful policies we have, is it enough? Like she said, the government will say maybe 1/3% of this should be female. Sorry to say, but in parliament, those 125 women we see, how many are actually doing their tech? When other women challenge them and say, well, you didn't choose me, I'm a district woman representative. So it means we're just happy with these tokenisms, with these promissory things, yes, and happy to just be the first. Like the PR world, it's about how beautiful you look and what. How about the content? And then you'll be judged by the content, by your outputs and things like that. No wonder sometimes you find that, I'll give you an example of Media Women's Association, where I'm a board chair, where we started off as a female-only organization. We wanted for women, with women, everything women, but we found that we had to go and bring the men because of that mentality. Yeah. And sometimes those realities to balance that work-home challenge. Okay, we've got a program at this time, a woman has to work at midnight and she can't. Sometimes it has to do, and many times as soon as women get married, something happens. As a lecturer at Makerere, I think 70, almost 60% of our students are normally females. Sorry, if I can just wrap this up. 70% of the students in mass communication are female. What happens to those women in the work life? They sort of disappear somewhere. Yes. And most of them, it's about, oh, once I got married, I couldn't do this. Once this happened, I couldn't do this. So what aren't we doing right?
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much, Dr. Litho, for those heavy, inspiring words. I would like to pick the brain of Ms. Chomuhendo. Dr. Litho spoke about tokenism and how a lot of organizations are now trying to tick a box by saying we have 70% of our workforce are women, 30% are men, as a form of affirmative action. However, what are your thoughts around not just ticking a box and saying we have 70% of women in our organization, but actually using the intellect, the experience, the attributes, the knowledge of these women to actually advance our various sectors, advance the organization and its objectives? I want to hear your thoughts around that, about actually using the content that these women bring to the workforce and not just counting them as numbers. Ms. Chomuhendo, please. Kindly unmute yourself, Ms. Chomuhendo.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Tina. Good evening, members. Sorry, I was having some connection problem.
Did you hear my question? Ms. Chomuhendo, did you get the question?
Yeah. Hello, Tina. Tina, can you please pose the question?
Yes. Dr. Litho spoke about tokenisms and how a lot of organizations lately are bragging and boasting that maybe 70% of their workforce are females as a form of trying to, show that they are supporting women's rights, women emancipation, etc. But what are your views around not just ticking those boxes and saying we have 70% of our workforce as women, but actually using the content that these women can bring to the organization, using the intellect, using the experiences and the knowledge that these women can bring to the organization in advancing its objectives?
Yeah, my view of that is actually going to be, I'll touch on that as I make my presentation. But one thing we need to move away from is to avoid just quantifying and ticking the boxes, as in we have a given number of PR female practitioners or PR managers at a given position, but rather look at what is their what strategic value do they bring to the organization. It's not enough to have a given number of PR practitioners. hired, say, in one organization, if they cannot take part in decision making, if they are not part of the boardroom where key decisions are made, where key propositions are made that give strategic direction to the running of organizations, and also enabling organizations meet their key targets. So for me, it's on the quality. What quality do these females bring to decision-making in organizations, as opposed to how many people do you have in those organizations, in those positions rather.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chomuhendo. I'll ask the same question to Professor Balunywa, who is also on the line. I'd like your views on actually using the content or the quality that these women bring to the organizations, as opposed to just saying, I have 70% of my workforce in as women. Professor?
Thank you very much. A very good evening to all of you, friends on this call. I want to share my experience in, I'm sorry, I'm in a car. I had to come from our own Women's Day celebration, and I was failing to log in earlier on. So I'm in a car. You'll forgive me for not sharing my video, otherwise I look out of place. I had to stop to get onto this. So I want to share my own experience at work, having worked with ladies for a long time. Women are more stable, they are more reliable, they perform better than men. And that has been my experience in my workplace. And as a result of that, I found myself in my position as head of the institution preferring women managers to men. And as you say, really, it's not a matter of numbers. Numbers should not be numbers. Yes, you'll find that increasingly, as we have more women in the university, for instance, in the last 3 graduations in Makerere or so, the number of women graduating is more than that of men, I think about 51%, whereas 20 years back, it was about 12, 15%. There's something happening there, which we need to recognize. And to me, if we educate women and give them positions of responsibility, they're going to perform very well. They're excellent performers. And as I said, they're more trustworthy, they are more reliable, especially with financial matters, given what we see in our country today.
Thank you very much, Professor. I'm very, very happy.
Problem is that, yes, yeah, the problem I've seen is what interrupts with women's performance. In the workplace, when you find men who, I think either out of their upbringing, they see women as sex objects. They're that kind of men. So those men will interrupt with the women's performance, they look down upon them. But I have not experienced a situation where a male manager has said, I don't like, a male has said, I've got a problem with this person as a lady, as a manager. I haven't seen that. The other one is when people get into love relationships at the work. That also tends to interfere with the women's performance to some extent. But otherwise, personally, what I've seen, if people have excellent relationships, they respect one another professionally, they'll perform a wonderful job. And I've experienced that in my own institution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. And it's humbling to hear that women make better managers than men. That's great to hear. I would like to touch on why do we think women leadership more broadly and more specifically on the PR field is important? And what gender-specific challenges, stereotypes, or barriers have you had to face, Lydia, in your career to overcome some of these? And what remedies do you recommend for employers to take to equal out the ground and to improve the positioning of women in the PR and communication industry? Lydia, if you could touch on that, touch on the challenges, stereotypes, or barriers you've had to overcome in your career, and how can we move past that? Lydia?
Okay. Good evening, all participants. Good evening, fellow panelists. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. And Happy Women's Day. The challenges that I personally have experienced, or maybe I'll start with what I think of women's leadership broadly, and especially in the PR field, and the specific challenges that come with it. First of all, when I think about women's leadership in public relations, in the public relations industry, fine, we tend to think of tough talking women in suits, seated around the boardroom table, contributing earth-moving discussions and decision-making processes, driving corporate strategies. That is good. And that is where we would all like to be. And that is our aspiration. We want all women to be taking part in the decision-making process. However, as statistics have shown, much as there are so many, the PR industry is dominated by women, making up nearly 70% of the workforce in the PR industry. There are just a few of them that take up those leadership roles that we aspire to. Well, we may argue that we can't all be CEOs and we can't all be decision makers because that's always an exclusive group. That's okay. Now, for me, what that makes me think is in which other ways can we play the role of leadership as women in the PR industry? Then I start looking at leadership differently. Leadership is about bearing a vision. Leadership is about inspiring. Leadership is about motivating. Leadership is about time management. Leadership is about the value that you bring to the organization, to the industry where you're located. And so I start looking at women as leaders in different ways. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't aspire to be CEOs and decision makers. No, we should. That should really be something that we focus on. But what if we all can't get there? Can't we lead? Can't we play the leadership role in different ways? So we need to start considering the different ways in which we can play leadership roles, in which we can influence trends in the industry. What can you do to be a woman of influence in the PR industry? Can you serve better? Can you innovate? Can you mentor others? Can you share your knowledge and experience? In which ways can you inspire? Because those are all aspects of leadership. So, what are the gender-specific challenges that come with those leadership roles? The challenges, the gender-specific challenges that afflict PR practitioners are really the same that afflict women all over. And we have already hinted on some of those. Sexual harassment, lower pay compared to men, promotional barriers, and women being noted for their social contribution rather than their technical and professional input. All those are challenges that we face every day. Personally, I have been fairly blessed that in my career, much as all those challenges have been present, I have been able to progress, fight and progress, fight all those challenges. And every woman in the industry faces them. The glass ceiling is real. There was a time I thought I wasn't progressing in this particular organization and I just had to quit and found a place that would allow me to progress. But there is a challenge of work-life balance, and that has become ever more real now in this season of COVID-19. We were thrown in the deep end, literally. A lot of us did not know how to navigate these waters called work from home. Work from home with the presence of children, we have to homeschool them. you have to support them, you have to do the chores because everybody is at home. Suddenly the maid is not enough. So we have had a challenge. But I always say that it's our responsibility, it is our duty to navigate and remain afloat. How? Prioritizing and organizing. You need to be organized. Everybody has or works within a 24-hour day. And you're not going to give the excuse of, oh, I was attending to the children, oh, I was pregnant, just like the previous speakers have said. We all operate a 24-hour day, but women as leaders, we have the privilege to play more roles, to multitask. And women are good at multitasking. So we need to take advantage. We need to leverage on that gift. Be organized, set your priorities and get them right. Nobody is going to stop to create an excuse for you just because of your gender. Nobody is going to forgive you just because you're a woman. So we must attend to all our responsibilities as leaders. We must be good mothers, good wives, good daughters, good aunties, and good workers. There is no excuse, unfortunately. And we should not play the victim card. The thing is, we should look for equity, as Dr. Litho has already said. There's the tendency to look for equality. We might never attain equality, but our pursuit should be for equity. Where are the opportunities? Where is fairness? Where is justice? If we have justice, if we have fairness in the way roles are distributed, in the way people recognize us as contributing in our different leadership roles, in the needs, in the contexts that we operate in, then I think we shall move forward. So for me, I say women should be very organized, know their priorities, accept and acknowledge that we are where we are and we cannot afford to sink. We have to remain afloat. We have to be organized. We have to work at improving ourselves all the time. You know, pursue another course, get another qualification, you know, get inspiration. We don't have a shortage of role models. Honorable Maria Chiwanuka is here. There are so many other outstanding women in our industry. We need to look at all those as opportunities to enhance ourselves and get ourselves out of that ditch and emancipate ourselves. Nobody is going to sympathize with us. Indeed, we are not looking for sympathy. We are only looking for opportunities for fairness. If we can get that, we shall outperform ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. I loved that. Look for opportunity. Dr. Litho, we are though faced with a small challenge. According to research from everythingpr.com, and as Lydia mentioned, 70% of people in the PR industry are female, but only 30% are in leadership positions. What then can you say are the key achievements or milestones of women in PR and communication leadership positions, given the discrepancies of leaders versus the actual workforce?
Apart from the beautiful faces, I mean, the 70% is actually the workforce, as you know. Leaders will strategize, they'll offer direction, but who does the work? And now, as Lydia has just said, do we recognize the different contributions women make? Or do we look at leadership as being the boss only? I think if we start looking at aspects like that, I think we can have a better appreciation that actually women do make a difference in their different ways. I mean, even the men we are challenging, we see not all men are the boardroom guys, not all men at the very top. They contribute at different levels, but it's appreciated and recognized. Now, can we start recognizing right from the household the different contributions of women? I mean, right from religion, there's a box women are put whereby women's contribution is not anything much to talk about. The man is the head of this home. Well, I'm a Christian, but I must say this, growing up, there's always this framed phrase in our house. And the man is the head of this home. And then they mention the God, the silent listen of every conversation. I'm sure you've come across that. But you know, we are always recognizing the man and never the woman, the mother, the sisters, what they're contributing. My father is an interesting man, but still I find that he has those patriarchal issues that bog him down and always argued. And I remember every time there was a conflict with my mother, especially to do with women and men, he always made this statement: even Margaret Thatcher comes home and cooks for his wife, or rather for her husband. And that was such a big thing. And I've always thought, what's the big deal? But because, and from a very young age, that caught my curiosity. And of course, later in life, I realized what he was trying to get at, that it doesn't matter if you're the vice president. When you come home, madam, you're my wife. And these are the rules, that you have to follow. Now, can we start looking at women as actual partners? And like Honorable said earlier, the community, our cultures, our families, those expectations, those cultural expectations and roles that women are subjected to is part of the issue. Religion being some of the other issue. And Honorable, allow me to use you as an example that I've always done. When you're a minister of finance, looking at all these men who had been ministers of finance, on that day when you stand there with the briefcase, we looked at the man as the man with the briefcase, and today is a day for reading the budget. Honorable, when you're a minister, which you become my case study, for gender and media. And we always, if you looked at the media, maybe you didn't think too much about it, but we looked at what you're wearing, your nails, your lipstick, what shape, what hair. And because you're a woman, and sometimes as women, we want to run away from this. Unfortunately, we are judged, first of all, by what we look at, even before we speak. And sometimes it's the undoing of some women in the movement. We think we can look like men, be rough, already you're sidelined. And like she said, it's about strategy. So if I'm going to look hot and you listen to me and I'm making sense, let it be that, So women, unfortunately, we're subjected to this kind of things, but we have to be strategic. Like she said, don't make a big deal about it. Okay, you think I'm going to make new hair just to appear on this Zoom meeting, that I say, my goodness, did you say Dr. Letho's hair? So we've got to think about these things. And then when I speak, you say, okay, it's not just about the face, but she actually has something she's saying. I'm sure Stephen, my colleague here, just threw on his shirt and came. The rest of us had to do a little more think about what am I going to wear. Unfortunately, that is what we go through, but does it get you somewhere? I think we have to think about that, but we have to appreciate women at their different levels of contribution and look at it as actual contribution, equate it and things like that. I don't know if any of you have seen something that was going around today where a little Indian boy, his father always said the mother was doing nothing. And then he drew so many scenarios, a crowd of pictures of his mother at home. She's cooking, she's fetching water, she's doing this. And for this year's calendar, India is making that their national cover. That 9-year-old, I think it's an 8 or 9-year-old, at that age, actually realizing that actually mommy does a lot more, So I think those are some of the contributions that we need to appreciate. That way we see women. So again, going back to what you said, the 70% women, they're not in the boardroom, but they do make a difference in the PR. And we know that PR does make a difference, but what more can we do? So like the bigger international theme for women is choose to challenge. As women, we should choose to challenge and not just be happy with those statistics of a 3% of us. Let's earn those spaces. Let's own those spaces. Let's leave a mark when we are there. Thank you.
Well said. Well said. Thank you very much. Well said, Dr. Letho. She has touched on something quite important, Professor Balunyua. She's talked about women's experiences. And I want us to look at the other vectors of power that we all have to grapple with in society, such as class, social economic status, ethnicity, age, religion, clan. I could go on and on. But Professor, what is the key to hearing these different voices and respectfully representing them when it comes to the key representation of women's lived experiences in the workplace? Professor?
Um, We have done very, and we have found the biggest liberating factor for women is education. For instance, we've seen, we are wondering why do we have women in boards, and what is it that prevents them from getting at the board? And you'll see that in the private sector, it's usually family that puts a woman on the board. And we found that in the government sector, of course, there are quotas now. I mean, not quotas as such, but there is some kind of affirmative action that you must have women on the board. Now, when they get there, do they make a contribution? And if what's the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge of women not being in the board is that they're not there. They're not many. But thank God, these numbers are growing, increasing, as I told you, in terms of graduations. And the second one will be, what course are they doing? The course they are doing will be a limiting factor in getting into certain positions. I mean, if you are looking for women architects, you may not find very many of them. You're looking for engineers, you may not find very many of them. So while they have been educated, they are not enough numbers. Now, how about what happens to those who are actually there? Again, it goes back to the same thing, depending on the men who are in this place. That are these men? Do they look at women as partners in terms of work, as people who have got the knowledge? And like I've said, I've always found them much better when they're there. So our biggest problem is our socialization. We have been socialized to believe that women have certain roles. Now, remember, as a country, we have a two-track economy. An economy where 70% of your people are in the rural areas, are living the traditional life, and both men and women see different roles. And then we have this economy where we have 15% or 20% of the people in the urban areas still with the same thinking. So the 10% of people in the country who believe that, yes, we may have equity. I think that's the right word to use. Equality can't take place because we have physical differences and biological differences. Where we have equitable approaches to things, then you find that the workplace is murky. You're going to get somebody comes from the village, is used to that thinking, gets the workplace, and definitely sees women as sex objects. So I think, to me, the liberating factor for women is education, and of course, forming a new culture where there is respect for women, a new culture where we see women as partners at work who can contribute equally as other men do. So that's my take for the moment.
Thank you very much, Professor. Ms. Chomhendo, the issues of solving inequality requires an all hands on deck response, where we need all genders to address and engage on the issue of gender inequality, discrimination, bias, etc. Therefore, what, in your opinion, do you think the role is of men in addressing this inequality? Ms. Chomuhendo? Are you there?
Yeah, yes, I am. You were breaking at the last.
Yes, my question was, solving inequality requires an all hands
Could you
on
please
deck
read the
response.
question again?
All right, solving inequality requires an all hands on deck response, where we need all genders to address and engage on the issue of inequality. So in your opinion, what do you think the role of men is in addressing this issue of inequality?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I think one of the things that men can do is to embrace a culture that enables them to mentor women or females that they work with, or within their networks, females within their networks, because mentoring is one of the ways in which we can build capacity and improve performance of women, and also improve their skills, and expose them to different ways of doing things. So I think mentorship is one of those things. And then also still in line with mentorship, I think that males can help women increase their influence at the workplace or on different projects they might be engaged in. And increasing that influence can be through helping them still improve their skills, allow them opportunities, to assert themselves, to be able to showcase what they're able to do, work with them, especially given the consideration, as we've seen, that you have more males in these leadership positions or decision-making positions. So in mentoring them, they'll still be building capacity. But also, since men are key decision makers, they could deliberate policies and come up with organizational guidelines that allow for some kind of affirmative action that would allow women to have more representation in decision-making positions. And that takes us back to the bit of tokenism, the first issue that we addressed. So when we have clear guidelines, when we have clear policies that articulate the role of women in these positions, I think then would also be able to deal with the whole aspect of tokenism. But also aware, without changing the question, I think the onus is not only on men. Women have what it takes to assert themselves and to show their capacity, and also be able to do to execute different roles based on their knowledge and their skills. Like you have so many graduates now coming from universities, with knowledge and skills in PR. So why they have what it takes to assert themselves. So it's also important for us women to take the mantle and increase our influence. How do we use our writing skills? How do we make our presence felt? Okay, which networks do we belong to that will expose us to greater horizons? How do we, when we are in the organization, how do we navigate the organization? Do we know where the decision-making centers are? How do we make use of them? And I'm not saying we make use of them in ways of portraying ourselves as beauties or using our bodies in any ways, no, but using our capacities in a professional manner to navigate the organization and make our presence felt. So it's not only men that would enable women reach that point, but I also believe that women have what it takes to make their presence felt and to use their skills and knowledge and confidence to assert themselves and go about their work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chomuhendo. Professor, I'd like to ask you the same question. As the only male in our panel, what role do you believe men play in addressing this inequality?
First of all, are men conscious of the fact that there is inequality? Because those who don't find the problem with, who don't see female employees as just women, but as colleagues, they support them like they support anybody else. But there are challenges. I mean, the challenges, the real challenges are when women get into the situation where, for instance, I'm talking from some experience, that you are sending out a group of people for training abroad, and the group will include some women, and then at some stage, sorry, I cannot go. you find that you are in a training, find that they look at women as sex objects. So to me, the role women should play is to support the women in their careers, you know. But we have this ugly thing of love that once it shows up, then stop understanding what they're doing becomes a problem, you know. So women should definitely support women in terms of supporting what they are doing. Looking at them as partners, we have this together. I mean, if you look at a team that is doing work, there's need for mutual trust. There's need for trust to say that, yes, we are working together on this, whether you're a man or woman, we are working together, so there must be trust. So men should have that role of looking at women as people who are complementing what they are doing, and that they are team members, and they should support them through the rules of the game, rather than what you see, which normally is what amounts to sexual harassment. So to me, where there's need for training, let them train them. Where there's need to support them in terms of a shoulder to lean on, let them do that. Because at times you find the woman comes into work and the problems are at home, you know. So you must be able to tolerate this lady. Or when you have a woman who is pregnant and has to be away, and you know, in the private sector, you're away for 2-3 months, you may find yourself replaced. So how should men support women? By understanding that we have physical and biological differences, and that these differences will require a woman to do certain things differently from what men do. And to me, it is recognizing that we have biological and physical differences, which give us different things. To me, that way, a man will be supporting a woman.
Thank you very much, Professor, for those words, especially with regards to the fact that we all need to support each other, regardless of our gender. Women to support women, fellow women, and men to also support the women. Lydia, I would like us to touch on the glass ceiling and your perceptions on what tools you believe women need to chip away at the persisting glass ceiling, looking at how women should navigate the structural and cultural expectations while avoiding the biases against them when it comes to being leaders. Your thoughts, Lydia?
Great. The glass ceiling, I wish it were physical, and then we would punch it and break it. Unfortunately, it is an invisible barrier. So while we recognize that there's that glass ceiling which we cannot go past, a lot of times, we don't really, a lot of times we don't know what we are dealing with. This glass ceiling is, you know, has constructs or from different walks of life or from different backgrounds, culture, religion, many things that come together to cause this invisible yet hard to beat barrier. So what do we do as women? I'll go back to do what you have to do and do it well. As Professor has said, once everybody recognizes women as people, fine with not exactly the same physical and biological features as men, but with capacity and ability to perform and meet or deliver on all expected outputs, then such barriers will begin to blur or get lost. Women, unfortunately or fortunately, have to work at it. No, I do not foresee a situation where the men say, oh, please, glass barrier, go away, glass ceiling, go away, or that they will drag it and move it. No, they are not going to accord us that sympathy. indeed we're not looking for it. We are the ones who have to work very hard. First of all, by proving our worth. If you are good at writing, write and write very well. If you're good at speaking, speak very well and dazzle everybody. If you're good at organizing special events, organize them so that everybody will keep coming back to you as the chief events organizer. Whatever task you have been given as a woman, deal with it, deliver it, even beyond expectations. That way, people will start seeing you differently. So do what you have to do and do it very well. That way, you'll start chipping away at that glass ceiling, that invisible glass ceiling. 2, as much as possible, do what is right. Do what is right legally, do what is right ethically and morally. Because you don't want to give an excuse to anyone to say, you see, she used her body. You see, it's because she looked this way and that way. It's because she dressed this way and that way. Be ethical in everything you do. Be professional. Do the right thing. I mean, look at your values. Each one of us has a set of values which we don't want to compromise. Honorable Maria talked about honesty. Once you even crack a little bit and you skimp on honesty, people begin saying, you see, she's acting that way because she's a gold digger. She wants to get free things. She can't do things because she's a woman, so she has to find those tricky ways. As much as possible, let us remain upright. I know it's difficult, but let us not give a chance to anybody. Let us hold ourselves accountable to higher standards. There are things we should not be caught doing as women. Remember your values and what you stand for, but always seek to excel. Don't sit there and do things half-heartedly, hoping that your gender will bail you out. As long as we work excellently, as long as we hold ourselves to high standards, continuously raise the bar, we shall chip away at that glass ceiling. People will soon realize there is no need to have that ceiling. They will shoot through it and we shall be promoted because we are good at what we do. That's what we should aim at. That's what we should aim at. Work hard to improve ourselves every day, aim for excellence, do what we have to do on time, do everything that's expected of you and then some. Then the glass ceiling will start disappearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Powerful words there about doing the right thing and harnessing our skills as women. I'm going to open the floor now for questions from our audience. I see quite a number of questions on the chat. Some are addressed to Honorable Chiwanuka. I'll ask you to answer those questions, and some are addressed to our panelists. Please note them down and we'll address the questions at once. Honorable Chiwanuka, there's a question here on, someone said you mentioned or touched on perception, but how about sexual harassment? How can members deal with sexual harassment in the workplace? Someone else speaks about male competition and bullying in the workplace, and certainly in the PR and media sector, it's quite common and it hasn't been fully addressed. But studies have also shown female competition and bullying to be a hindrance to women's elevation in PR. Studies have pointed out that there's an issue of female competition, with several women experiencing incidents of bullying by fellow women in the workplace. Do you agree with these factors? Do you agree with these factors, that these factors impede women's advancement based on their experiences with other women? And have you experienced a lack of support from women yourself? That is for you, Honorable. Then we have a question here: shouldn't radio or media have a policy on the duration of a station's employees? Example, 10 years, however popular someone is, to create room for fresh talent to come on board. Those are your questions, Honorable. We have a few questions here for Dr. Litho. Dr. Litho, please note them down. You raised a fundamental issue of self-esteem, Dr. Litho, building on your personal brand, strategic thinking, and leadership. Very salient in any profession. We have interfaced on various scenarios when men have also had self-esteem issues and are not bold enough. Your comment on that, Dr. Litho. Another question, Dr. Litho, is women's ambitions in the workplace are normally interpreted as overbearing and in many cases as a negative attribute. How do you advise women to handle that? It's a big issue. This, I think, is a general question. I'll ask Ms. Chomohendo to answer this question. It's a big issue for women leaders to teach and sensitize other young ladies to strike a balance between professionalism and seeking favoritism at the workplace, especially before male bosses. And it's common even in top offices. Your comment on that, Ms. Chomohendo? Okay, can we start with those questions and then we'll have more questions as we go along. Honorable, please, can you start us off with the questions that were asked to you?
Okay, thank you, Tina. You mentioned sexual harassment and bullying. This would be sexual harassment from male colleagues and bullying by female colleagues. Okay. I think they're very much one and the same. When it comes to sexual harassment, I think I know this is a no-no, which one has to stand up to immediately and with effect. To tell the so-called perpetuator that I do not like that, you're not allowed to do that to me, please stop. And should they continue, you need to gather your courage and go and report it. If one accepts favors, if one accepts presents, if one agrees to go on dates, then you're very much diminished in your ability to take a stand later on. You need to make a stop to it there and then. It's something I think the majority of women have faced, and it goes from men whistling at you when you go past a building site, which should just be taken with some laughter as you walk on, or real concentrated, consistent harassment by a superior at work. That's why many places have a very strong policy about office romance. So the tools are there for a woman who's being sexually harassed to make a stand. When it comes to bullying by female colleagues, alas and alack, this is a very sad state of affairs. Sometimes it's professional jealousy. Sometimes it is just a reaction of someone who sees a competitor coming up, so and so's after my job. And sometimes because the person's just not a very nice person at all. And again, the thing is to stand up to it and say, look, you and I have to work together. Let us try to work together while we're being pleasant to each other. If there's something I'm doing wrong, please tell me what it is, and I will see how I can correct it. And then on the question of having term limits for my on-air presenters, do you hear that, my presenters? You better pull your socks up. No, but seriously, at Radio 1 and Radio 2, we have something we call a stationality, which is the voice and the projection of the station to the public. We are not, the presenters are not the attraction, it's the station. We project the stationality. Radio 1 has a very distinct personality, and Radio 2 has a very distinct personality. But I could go on all night about those two children of mine, so I won't. But as long as someone fits into that stationality, and as long as the audience out there like them as we do, as per our annual surveys, we don't tend to change them. But as I said, we have a bunch of very ambitious, very capable, very personable presenters, and they tend to make their own way on into the world on their own volition. I think I've got 5 members of Radio One who are still were there on day one, and of which only one is a presenter. And I'm sure you'd like to invite anyone outside who says they should go and box it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Dr. Lita, you had some questions as well.
Yeah, the first one was about self-esteem, strategic thinking, self-branding at the workplace as not an issue for just women. How about men? Uh, I think men should also pay attention to this. As I said earlier, I'm a believer of equity, social justice, and fairness. So we should see this coming from both. Unfortunately, this is about Women's Day, and that's why my emphasis has been on women. And because we've been sidelined for so long, we tend to emphasize what can we do to better the women. But we know that men also face these challenges. But there's so many life coaches out there who can help you improve. There's so many self-help books out there that can help you improve. And some people are just nurtured in a certain way. Like you're born very confident with very highest self-esteem. Even when you're shaky, people think you're okay. And it would be good to associate with this kind of people and borrow a leaf from them. So there's so many strategies out there. And as communication students, or if you've not been trained that way, but normally in communication, there are all these public speaking opportunities and training and how to deal with the nerves and things like that. So you can be trained, but there's also the innate aspect of it. The other one about women who have those attributes that are looked at as strong in men are seen as overbearing, difficult to handle, and things like that. Unfortunately, society expects you as female to be different. And sometimes these are things that you have to deal with. And as honorables, sorry, honorable, we have to keep referring to you, said earlier, learn to ignore some of these things. I'm one of those who's a victim of those comments. Luckily for me, they're things I don't care about. That is what I am. And you know, they do that to disarm you. That is your strength. And sometimes I'm a believer in Machiavellian styles. You know, sometimes they say, as a leader, if you're looking for love, that is not your place. Do your work, lead. Yes, if they will not respect me, they will fear me and do the work. So sometimes I'm a believer in some of these principles that some people find extremist, but sometimes we have to do that. Unfortunately, we also have the challenge of, which is a question that directly went to her, but the queen bee syndrome, women who have made it and feel they shouldn't, you know, send a leaf down to help the younger women. I think we should all do that, but also guide. How do we fight this? How do we use this? It shouldn't be about what you look like, your body, but showcase. I don't know if I'll have another opportunity, or I should say some of the things that, based on the questions, yes. Yeah, so it's something related that I'll point out earlier. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much,
Later,
Dr. Lisa.
sorry.
Ms. Chomohendo, you had a question that I asked you to please answer.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. The question is on how young ladies can balance between professionalism and seeking favoritism at the workplace, especially before men bosses. This basically takes us back to our value system. I think Lydia touched on what values we possess at an individual level. And this is where our values come into play more critically, because it takes character, it takes one's value system, it takes confidence for one to be able to rely on their own capability, on their own ability to do certain things, as opposed to trying to seek favors from male bosses so as to either climb the ladder or be given more opportunities at the workplace. And so I wouldn't say there is a blueprint to that, but I believe that ladies should be grounded in their values, in their character, and be confident enough to to do what is right and not only seek favors using their bodies or using their beauty. It's mainly about their character and value system.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chomohendo. That's very inspiring words there. I'm going to give the audience 1 more minute to ask any questions they might have. If there are none, I would like all our panelists, starting with Honorable Chiwanuka, to give us her 3 takeaways from today's dialogue. What would you like the audience to go away with following our extremely insightful dialogue this evening? And the same question is going to be addressed to all the other panelists. So panelists, please get ready. What are the 3 takeaways you would like our audience to go away with this evening? We're going to start with Honorable Chiwanuka. Your three takeaways, please, from today's dialogue.
Thank you very much. I first would like to say the first takeaway is that I thoroughly have enjoyed being a woman, and I enjoy being a woman. I would not be anything else in the world. And I think all the women out there should be able to say that of themselves. The second takeaway is that, to borrow a phrase of Hillary Clinton, one very powerful woman, it takes a village. In order to make the best of yourself, to achieve the best you can be, you need to draw on the assistance of everybody around you. The men, the relatives. In my case, I'd like to just pay tribute to the men who've helped me on my way, starting with my father, who believed that a girl can do it and made sure we did it, even though there was some smacking along the way. I like to pay tribute to my mother, who proved him right in that a woman can be just as good, if not better, than a man, when she's left as a widow with 6 children, all under the age of 16, in Uganda of the 70s. I'd like to thank my sons, 3 boys, who when I became a minister said, "Don't worry, Mama, we won't trouble you at all, so you can concentrate on being a minister." Thank you, lads. My husband for his support, and all the men who helped me along the way, my colleagues, my bosses, by making sure we always had cordial relations. I've never had an instance of prolonged acrimony with the opposite sex. And I think as women, we need to make sure we do that. We must not come off as professional men haters. We must be trusting in our own capacity and own ability to make it on our own merits. As someone, I think it was a professor who said, you must seek equity and not favors. I think that is my second takeaway. And then the third takeaway is have fun. Have fun while you're being a woman. Have fun while you're going up the ladder. That's it.
Thank you very much, Honorable. I'll now give the privilege to Dr. Lethal to give us her 3 takeaways.
Thank you. My first takeaway is that it should be about gender equity. Let's bring men to the table so that they appreciate what we are talking about. I love men personally, not just as a mother of men, but I think mostly men have been supportive to me. And I think because I showcase my abilities and I don't shy away from who I am. And I think maybe that is something the rest of us should do. The second is that nobody owes you a favor as a woman. So snap out of the self-sympathy and do your bit and invest in personal development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Can I have Lydia? Lydia, your 3 takeaways, please.
Great. Thank you very much, Tina, and thank you all panelists. One, I must emphasize that we should bring the men on board, not for any other reason, but for the reason that when men are happy, women are happy. So we should seek equity and we should all work towards it, men and women. This is not a men versus women issue. It's joint vision, joint action, joint learning. So as much as possible, let's have the men walk this journey with us. Please, men, don't misunderstand us to be creating acrimony between the sexes or the gender, both sides of gender. Please, let's work together. When men are happy, women are happy. When women are happy, men are happy. We're all part of the human race. So let's look at this as something that we are doing for the human race, not for women alone. My other takeaway is to the women, be the best version of yourself. Be the best you can be in everything that you do. Nothing is going to come easy and nothing is going to come as a favor. You have to really work at it. Do what is right, morally, ethically, legally. Most importantly, women, let's tell our story. We need to tell our story in the profession. Let's inspire others. That's leadership. Let's motivate others with our experiences. Let's share our successes. Let's share our good experiences so that we inspire both men and women in the profession. Because if you look at all the public relations texts, women are really put at the bottom of the heap, and yet we are doing great things in this profession. Let's share our story. Let's document our experiences, and then we shall inspire. I believe that inspiration is part of leadership, and the only way you can inspire others is to tell their story. Finally, men, it all starts at home. How you socialize your sons, how you socialize your daughters is going to contribute greatly to how they project these things when they come to the greater world. As a mother of 4 boys and a wife to 1 husband, I really know that it's my responsibility to inspire the men in my household to be respectful, to appreciate women and the many things that we can do. Happy Women's Day.
Thank you so much, Lydia. Can we have Professor Balunywa?
Yeah,
Please give us your
yes, thank you very much. I think the first takeaway is that we must continuously or increasingly put girls in school in the long term to be able to have educated people. Education is one of the key solutions to the challenge that we have, because it will enable us to build a middle class where we don't have the lots of differences. 2, to be able to put women into leadership, women must work hard. I mean, just go out there and excel, just like anybody else. Anybody else who has excelled will rise to the top. I mean, I've met some of our women top managers in this country. I mean, you don't go and see them as women. You just go and see them as executives who are doing a wonderful job. You know, I've interviewed many of them, Madam Kajina, you know, all that group of women. They're just excellent managers. I mean, there's nothing you're going to take out from them. So these issues of harassment and so on will not arise because they stand up to what they're doing. Lastly, I think is for the men not to see women as sex objects. And men must grow out of that. That yes, when you are working with a lady, she's a partner in the workplace, a team member. A team member must be trusted, must be respected. And if we do that, we're going to have higher productivity among women. We're going to have happy organizations, happy people. And for everybody on this call, a happy Women's Day.
Thank you very much, Professor. Last but not least, Ms. Chomahendo, your 3 takeaways.
Thank you, Tina. My first takeaway is it's not yet uhuru. Women are still underrepresented at the corporate ladder, so we still have our work cut out. I think it's important that we need to be learning all the time so as to keep ourselves relevant. And this really strikes home for me, especially from a training perspective. It challenges me and my colleagues at the university to prepare our students better for this kind of reality. And then secondly is that as women, we have what it takes to bring strategic value wherever we are. And like my colleagues mentioned, both women and men should work as a team, because each of us have some uniqueness, certain strengths, certain attributes that we bring to the table, which would make a great team at the end of it all. And thirdly is that I'll pick from what Lydia shared with us earlier. It's important for us to do what we know how to do best and do it well. So whether it's writing, whether it's public speaking, whatever our strengths are, we can ride on that to shine wherever we are. Thank you, and happy Women's Day to us all.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chomuhendo. That marks the end of our panel discussion. We are extremely overrun in terms of time, but please keep the chat running if you have any questions. I think this engagement is not just for today. Honorable Chwanuka said, Women's Day is not only on the 8th of March. These discussions, these debates should continue every single day. These issues are not going away tomorrow. We need to engage. We need to find solutions together. Men and women together can be part of the solution. I'd now like to welcome back the president of PRAU to just give us a few remarks before we have our vote of thanks. Stephen, please.
Thank you, Tina. And I would like to thank our audience. I would like to thank our panelists. I would like to thank our keynote speaker. Earlier on, I introduced the Governing Council. Unfortunately, many of our members hadn't logged in. I would like to do that exercise again. Dear our keynote speaker, as I said, PRAU runs on 3 organs. It has the AGM, it has the Governing Council, and working committees. We are in between there as a Governing Council. We are in between AGM and the working committees. So it is a well-established association, and it is really operating very well. Allow me to again introduce to you members of the Governing Council. I'll start with myself. My name is Stephen Mwanga. I'm the president of the Public Relations Association of Uganda, usually referred to as PRAU. I want to introduce the vice president who has been moderating the show, Tina Wamala. She's our vice president. Yeah. And then I go to the other members in the GC that are joining us online. We have Ms. Allen Semper. Ms. Allen Semper, please raise your hand. Okay. Ms. Allen Semper, please join us in this introduction. Okay. Next is our director of programs, Ms. Jackie Takaniziwa. Please raise your hand. Thank you so much. And we also have in there the director PR, Ms. Lynn Tukei. Yes, Ms. Lynn Tukei. Okay. I think she's also a little bit busy or having connection issues. Then we have the treasurer. The treasurer is none other than Mr. Charles Nsamba. Yes, Charles? Then we have Director Discipline, Ms. Yvonne Mpanga. I think they still have connection issues. Then we have the Deputy Secretary General, Ms. Kezia Kobulungi. I see her online, but okay, she's there. Kezia, can you raise your hand? Okay, but there she is on the screen. Then we have a student representative, Mr. Joseph Kakoza. I don't see him logged in. He could be having connection issues. But way and beyond that, another very important member of the governing council is the immediate past president, the person who the current president replaces. And that is none other than Misara Kajingo, just to my left here. Yes. She has been very supportive and she has handled the transition very well and handed over power peacefully. Yes. Yeah, so we are really very grateful for that transition, very smooth transition. And you can see she's still with us here and will always be with us in the governing council. That is the governing council, Madam Keynote Speaker. Thank you so much, Tina.
Thank you very much, President Mr. Stephen Mwanga. Very quickly, I would now like to pass over to Helen Nanteza Kawesa, who is going to give a vote of thanks on behalf of Parliament. Parliament has hosted us this evening and we're very grateful as PRAU. Helen, please.
Thank you, Tina. I want to, on behalf of the Parliament of Uganda, to thank you all for accepting to join us this evening here at the Parliament of Uganda. Many of you fear Parliament. So having you here on a day like this in the evening on a public holiday, it really warms our hearts. So thank you for gracing us with your presence today. I want to thank the GC, first of all, for organizing this activity, hosting it. I think they are, if I'm right, 3 weeks into office. They were sworn in on the 19th, Honorable, and having them organize it very fast, I think is amazing. But I'm not surprised because the majority of them are women. So that's what women do. We've been talking about this. That's what women do. So PRAU, thank you for voting in the women. I want to thank also, of course, Sarah, who she has been thanked. She handed over office 3 weeks ago. But what was on her mind was this Women's Day. She usually used to talk about it whenever she was calling us and stuff. Women's Day, Women's Day. So sorry, I thank you for ensuring that the dream, your wish has come. This activity was started, I think, 2 years ago, and last year we didn't have it because of lockdown. So now that it's back with such vigor, is good. I want to thank the keynote speaker. Thank you, Maria, for joining us at short notice, and you've done tremendously well. I mean, you had us listening to you for probably an hour or so, and we didn't get tired. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, for making us really recognize that, and thank you for using women in your organization, giving them a platform to also perform and outperform the men, I believe, because, okay, but the men are my friends there. Thank you for giving that platform to perform well. I want to thank the GC, I've thanked the panelists, Professor Balinywa. I know he has had another activity, I think this afternoon, and now he was with us. Thank you very much. Lydia, Marjorie, and Patricia, who's here with us, always inspires me with her very passionate work and presentation. Thank you very much. I want to thank the team that is here from Parliament, and they're all, I think they're all gentlemen. They're supposed to be looking after their ladies at home, and they've come here to look after PRAU. Thank you very much, Moses on the Zoom. ICT, and Moses on the camera. Stand up, and Honorable sees you. Yes. And they're all Moseses, and another Moses. Thank you, Moses, for being here. And these colleagues from us, from the Parliament Fraternity, Ronald and Apollo, thanks for being here as well. And there's a little guest behind there. I think that's Sarah's. Thank you for coming with again. And of course, Brenda from the admin for being here. So I won't say much because Tina is looking at me with funny eyes. But thank you very much, and thank you very much for coming. And come again. The door is always open. Next time we'll first give you a tour before you indulge in this. And from this gentleman behind there also served us refreshments. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you very much, Helen. And once again, on behalf of PRAU, thank you very much for hosting us this evening at your wonderful facilities, and for your support staff as well, supporting this dialogue. Last but certainly not least, I'd now like to give our Director of Programs an opportunity to give us a vote of thanks before we close this dialogue. So Jackie Tahakanezibwa, please give us the vote of thanks.
All right, thank you. I think I'm now unmuted. Before I give my vote of thanks, I'd like to just remind us that 7 out of 10 members of the Governing Council are ladies. So this means that PRAU is leading the way in terms of inclusion and diversity. Now, I deem it an honor and a privilege to be giving the vote of thanks on behalf of the Governing Council. But before I do that, I'd like to thank the Lord for giving us an opportunity on this day, but also for making this event, our maiden event, a resounding success. Now, on behalf of the Governing Council, I would like to extend hearty vote of thanks to our keynote speaker, Honorable Maria Kiwanuka, and to our distinguished panelists, Professor Valunywa, Webaleino Baba, Tweyanziza, to Dr. Litho, Asante Sana, and to you, Lydia Mirembe, Webalenyo, Tweyanziza, and to Marjorie, Webalemno. Now, I would also like to thank our President, PRAU, Stephen. Thank you so much for your leadership and for guiding us as we prepared this event. I would like to thank the immediate past President, Sarah Kajingo, for your support. Thank you all for always being there for us. I would like to also extend my sincere appreciation to the members of the GC, and of course, the past presidents, and most especially the lady past presidents, Cynthia Mpanga and Goreti Masade. They may not be here, but we appreciate them, seeing that we're celebrating Women's Day. We thank you so much. And of course, I would like to thank Parliament of Uganda, represented here by Helen Kawesa. Thank you so much for always being a friend to PRAU. We appreciate your support. You've always been there for us. And of course, the members of PRAU, we appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for making time for this engagement. I would like again to thank our panelists and the keynote speaker, for the thoughts that they've shared with us. But not only that, for sparing time, making time to be here with us. I know there were so many Women's Day celebration events. I am sure you had so many invitations, but you made time to be with us. We do appreciate your time. It has been a pleasure to see Honorable Maria Kiwanuka again after a long time. Thank you so much for your submissions. Indeed, you've inspired us and reminded us of what is possible when we dream big and think big. And my key take home from this conversation is that we need men to cheer us on as we dream big, as we go mega. We need their support. They are very important in this success equation. For me, that has been key, a key take home from this conversation. But also the fact that you have reminded us, Honorable Marek Wanka, that we should not play victim. That is key for us. And definitely the other exciting one has been having fun as we go up the ladder. That is very important. It's very critical for us as we move on. Thank you so much. Before I forget, I would like to thank Tina. Thank you so much for moderating the session. You've been such a wonderful moderator. We appreciate you and appreciate all of you members of PRAU. But before I leave the floor for Tina, I would also like to tell our members that this is just the beginning. This is our very first event. We have a lot planned. We will be having monthly master classes. We'll be having different webinars. We'll be having mentorship. We plan to go so big on mentorship. So that will be coming through, and you'll be seeing the different programs that we'll be coming up with. Once again, thank you so much, our keynote speaker, our distinguished panelists, and all the people who have made time, our members made time to be with us. Of course, the media that has been here. I know this has been a virtual event, but also we had a command center there at Parliament. We do appreciate the technical team and everybody who has tuned in. Happy Women's Day. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jackie. Jackie, Director, Programs. I would now like to draw this dialogue to a close and end by borrowing the words of some of our panelists and our keynote speaker. To the women, and even the men, I believe, nobody owes you any favors. Never play the victim. To the women, play on the fact that we're the majority in the population, in society. Let's use our skills, let's use our knowledge to advance in this elusive space, in this elusive world. Ms. Chomuhendo mentioned the fact that we need to learn. Let's continue learning. Let's continue growing. That's the one way we'll shut everybody up, through our knowledge and our experience. But most importantly, you being a woman is something that you should be proud of, and look at your value system and not what other people are looking at to take yourself to the next level. Happy Women's Day to all the women on this call, and generally, happy International Women's Day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us for our inaugural maiden PRAU event as GC 2020-2022. We appreciate, and we'll see you soon. Have a blessed night, everybody. Good night.